Friday Live feature 72, which gives me pause as to saying, do I plan on doing this nonsense for the rest of my life or what? For the foreseeable future. I really liked reading that novel, but it was really long. It was a long haul. Those of you who stuck with it, I greatly appreciate, but I also understand anybody who was kind of like, well, I have better things to do than Story Hour with Beardo. Anyway, though, I do probably want to read more things, probably shorter, depending. The Brothers Karamazov does beckon, I admit. Well, anyway, a few things to chat up. One is my children's interaction with consumable media, particularly games on the PlayStation. Their taste is rather impeccable. They drive to the independent, creator-owned, or indie-spawned games, apparently by choice, with little prompting from me, and then they come up and explain to me that indie is better because of this and this and this. And I'm like, really? Yeah, ain't that interesting? Well, anyway, one of the okay, so what am I talking about? I mean, there's Hollow Knight and Don't Starve, and nothing surprising to any of you people who are into this, which I am not. So bear in mind that I only find out about these things because they come up and say we want that. So then I have to go and look it up and discover just how many tits are involved and stuff like that. So anyway, the latest, although it's been a while, it's been a few months, so it's not really recent. Is The Binding of Isaac, which you might be saying about this point, how old are these kids again? And that was sort of my thought when I, took a peek at The Binding of Isaac. And then I decided a couple of things. First of all, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with the pushback. Let's just admit that up front. And then second, they'll probably get into it anyway. I mean, if I say you can't have it to play, well, they'll just hop onto, YouTube when I'm not looking, and they're going to watch all the videos and playthroughs and all that crap anyway. And if therefore, they have the game, that reduces, I've found, that reduces the chance that they'll go and do that. And at least they will then be experiencing the gameplay and experiencing, the essence of the thing, as opposed to the adjective deleted, culturally compromised version of the promotion of the thing. All right. So long story short, I said, okay, but I want you to ask questions. And that's what I'm doing for a lot of the stuff that they want to check out these days is, yes, go ahead, but I'm expecting questions. I'm expecting you to engage with that material, come up with your own questions about it, and then we can talk about that and you can see what my answers are. Little did one of my sons anticipate the result when he wandered up to me one day and said, Papa, what's this about Jacob and Esau? What's their story? Hoo-ha, I said. Well, now, I don't know if I told you guys about this already. I may be repeating myself, as old men will. Well, what I did was I dug up, well, it's not dug up, I mean, it's prominently available on my bookshelf, Robert Crumb's illustrated book of Genesis, which is, given the textual version that was chosen by his clients, is complete in its text. So it's not abridged text. So there's that. And then I also have the, my own graphic, well, here and there ripped from the internet, but also, with my notes, graphic display of who wrote what. Now, I know how controversial that is, but the fundamental notion, as established about a century ago, that it is a matter of who wrote what in the first place, is still a bit culturally startling to people, believe it or not. And so, therefore, the the pettifogging debate over just how many redactors was it, and how old was that original document, and all blah blah blah. Okay, I've got my opinions about this or that, but I'm not an expert either. And what matters to me is that we do have fairly large blocks of types of authors and the order in which they have either added things or pieced things together, so that the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, or more accurately, just the Torah, is as such, is basically this constructed bulk item. Thinking of it, instead of authoring text, and think of it in terms of constructing a book and then adding text as needed, and ordering things as you desire. And the sequence in which this occurs, I think, is well understood, debated in all of its details, but as such a phenomenon well understood. Well, anyway, so I have sort of a big diagram so I can understand it myself. And so my poor son was suddenly seated at the table. We sat down with opening to the first page of Crumb's work, and slapping down these pieces of paper and saying, all right, we're reading this thing. So it's the book of Genesis, which is in and of itself a bit of a tome. And I know that nobody could expect Crumb to do otherwise than just merely fulfill, the assignment that he was hired for. But boy, do I wish that he were a crazy man who just went ahead and did the whole Torah this way, and then I could use my diagram, to help out all the way through, because you can really see it. I mean, with the panel approach and with the text in complete form, boy, the jumps from source to source are just outrageously obvious. I mean, it's the most amazing teaching technique. So yes, he and I went through it from stem to stern. It took us a while. I mean, I definitely wanted content retention. So we didn't do much at a time. And of course, as one should, I did the genealogy. I did the it's basically the saga of a family. So, you have 3 or 4, 5 generations of people and all of their dramas as we go through. And we discussed as we went, and we, judged things as we went in terms of, what that character was like, or what is or isn't known based on what is actually said. When I say known, what I mean in terms of story-wise, what are we just not seeing? I mean, we're seeing a piece or a glimpse of some kind of story here that may or may not even have existed as a story. It may be retroactively implied by people gluing things together, or it may actually have been lost, a great deal of it, and then this is some fragment of it, whatever. But in either case, I mean, we are looking at a text now. If it wasn't a text before, it is now. So, what do you think? I mean, what's Jacob like? What's Esau like? Well, what do they do? It's quite fascinating too, this thing. First of all, the game is called The Binding of Isaac. So therefore, when we get to the Abrahamic moment is fascinating, to my son as we're going through. And one thing we noted that was kind of interesting is later on, after that event in the sequence, when Jacob, Isaac's son, is talking to other people and referring to his lineage as a source of authority, or a source of at least, deserving respect. So he talks about his the God of my grandfather Abraham and the terror of Isaac, referring to the same entity. And this is repeated several times, and it's kind of compelling. Really, I mean, you say, okay, wait a minute, let's just forget all the Judaism, forget all the Christianity, forget all the book, this, and religion, that. Just look, we're looking at this thing. This dude refers to, God as the God of my grandfather, of Abraham, and the terror of Isaac. Wow. that's like a punch. That's a bit of character study context, and again, it's repeated several times. This phrase was obviously like dropped here and there by whichever contributor that was, into the course of events of this part of Isaac's life, of Jacob's life when he's talking. So it is notable. I mean, it's really notable to look at these moments of intrinsic context and judgment, treating this as a text to read with characters in it running around doing things, is compelling. Actually, there's enough there. It's a mess. Oh, there's things that start and stop. Oh, there's things that are so obviously, squirted in there, and there's things that are always deeply fascinating to at least muse upon how they have been used later. And I do not say interpreted, I say used later, weaponized, in fact. And how contradictory that is to what is apparently actually happening in the story. So all of that's fine. I do not come to blowtorch your fave book in this regard. I'm reading it in the way that I read it. But it was quite an experience. When we did the whole thing, we ended up with a huge, I've done it before, but doing it together was a lot of fun, and I was doing it more clearly than I would do for my own notes, which is all scratchy, and you end up with a real nice, lineage of the characters, and I actually found it in that context, and compromised as it is by Broadway productions, and also I would say a very different atmosphere of storytelling than other parts of that book. The story of Joseph, son of Isaac. There, I did it again. I know what I'm talking about. I just don't sound like I know what I'm talking about. The story of Joseph, son of Jacob, in his sojourn in Egypt and the various events thereof, actually make a much more interesting human story. To the point where, Eric was very moved by the final reunion, with Jacob, and we were also both generally perturbed, as I have been before. But it was, I went slowly this time and let my son do the talking as we went, and we were both, perturbed, me again, by the negative qualities of Jacob, also called Israel. Who really isn't. I mean, I found Isaac a compelling character. I found Abraham a compelling character. I find Esau, in particular, a compelling character. I struggle very, very hard to find anything to like about Jacob. And ultimately, only his love for Joseph is, strangely difficult to parse. Strangely difficult to identify with. But even so, the climax of that story is you can see why it's in there. You can see why somebody wrote this down. Well, anyways, that was up in the last few months, and another interesting set of questions arose. I mean, the game is continually producing more questions. I mean, Lilith, right? And any number of details, as well as me kind of wincing every so often at some feature of the game and the implications of the unseen story. I think they kind of leave this very meta and kind of up to you to think about, which is, what is the story of, this Isaac kid and his mom, such that he's having these, these fantasies and daydreams and scribbles and stuff. I mean, can be pretty appalling. And I'm not quite sure just how far my kids have gone in thinking about what that might be. Kind of glad not to, maybe later. So lots of these questions, crop up. Who was this? Who was that? And it's fun, actually. So that's, I guess, a bit of parenting stuff. That beware of playing, culturally loaded terms, or in encountering culturally loaded terms in this household. There will be a discussion and readings that proceed. Well, other news. This is something I don't really like. You won't see like a post, a selfie on Facebook about it. But for those of you who stuck with me through this video, the vaccinations in Sweden, proceed apace. And I fell into the age range, or the age range caught up with me a little while ago, and then I got on the list, and so got the first vaccination a few weeks ago, and then the second one yesterday, for the Pfizer jab, as they say. And of course, just in time for Delta to probably be rolling into Sweden even as we speak. But so the plan is to continue to mask up in crowded / inside conditions, which is pretty much what I've been doing, and to keep the social scene to a minimum, but opening up a little bit, as witnessed by the arrival of some friends from Germany on their way up to Stockholm and staying with us for a night along the way, which was so wonderful. Oh, human contact. It's been too damn long. I mean, just to be able to kick back with people. And I know lots and lots and lots of people here in Sweden who've just been doing that ordinarily, the whole time without really any regard for pandemics. And of course, that's why Östergötland has this insanely high infection rate, is because of this attitude. But anyway, having been cautious, very cautious, it was really, it was almost revelatory to be hanging out with people whom I like so much and haven't seen for so long, and really makes me want to say, all right, when logistics permit, should they ever do so, I'm on the bullet train to Berlin, thank you very much, and other parts that by my standards are extremely accessible. ASAP. It's just we're not P yet, are we? But we will be, he says, forgetting that he's a biologist for a moment or two. But onwards, that's the latest. Perhaps more literary things or more meaningful things shall be forthcoming next time. By then, actually, I'll kind of be on that vacation that we talked about. So really looking forward to that one.